Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Joel Beya, and I'm back fresh from a holiday, excited about all the transfer news. I've been joined here by someone very special. He was helping us out last summer, and he is back. CBS's Ben Jacobs. How you doing? You good?
I'm good. Great to be back, Joel. I'll tell you something. We're only just over a week into the window, and it already feels like deadline day week. It's transfers and drama everywhere, so I'm enjoying it.
It's exciting stuff, man. And clubs have really been like moving along with their transfers in Europe and also in Saudi. We're going to have that chat later on. But I want to start off with Mason Mount to Manchester United. Now, for me, I thought they were out the race, Ben. What happened? What changed?
They were never out the race. In fact, on the night when Manchester United's third bid was placed and subsequently rejected, that was 50 plus 5 million. I reported that Manchester United wouldn't walk away. And then 24 hours later, we saw the games that often take place with a transfer when two sides are about to meet and possibly reach a compromise, which is obviously what happened. So Manchester United indicated they might be looking at, shock horror, Moises Caicedo, Chelsea's number one target at the moment. And then that was countered by maybe a cut price deal is available for Bayern Munich, even though they hadn't actually tabled an offer for Mason Mount. And then subsequently, the parties met in America a few days later, and a compromise was reached. And this was always likely. It's a 55 plus 5 deal, which is in keeping with Manchester United's ballpark valuation. And if they pay the extra 5, it will mean that Manchester United have won trophies. So this resolves the saga early. And Mason Mount was keen to know where he was starting pre-season. He's a player that's got great respect for Chelsea, but ultimately the last contract offer he received from Chelsea was a 1-year extension in February. So this wasn't a case of sign a new Chelsea deal or move to Manchester United. It was a case of choose to stay at Chelsea, fall in love with the Pochettino project, and then try and continue talks at a slightly later date, or settle his future now, go and play Champions League and move to Manchester United. And in the end, Mount decided that Manchester United was the right move to him. He's got great respect for Chelsea, but it's now a fresh chapter.
I want to say it's good news for Man United because it looks as if he was like their main target, right? So it's good to see that they've actually gone and they've got their main target, because I think that's probably the fans' concerns. You know, if you're going for someone, you don't get him, etc. But the fact that they've gone for him and they've got him might not be everyone's favorite, might not be the price that the United fans would have been happy paying for, but it looks like Ten Hag's getting what he wants.
Yeah, for Ten Hag, a big priority, a creative-minded midfielder, which is why it was so strange when suddenly Manchester United were pushing for Caicedo, because not only of the price tag, but the fact that he's not an attacking midfielder. So the number one priority is still a traditional number 9. I think that's fair to say. But ultimately, there's low optimism Manchester United can get. Harry Kane, for example, Rasmus Højlund is of interest, but Atalanta want a big price for him as well. So the most gettable target, certainly before pre-season, was Mason Mount, and Manchester United will be delighted. And it also dispels the myth that Manchester United can't spend before the uncertainty surrounding the takeover is clarified. And now we wait and see if they can get another one in, because my understanding is Manchester United were always so strict on their valuation for Mason Mount, not just because of his contract situation, but because they're looking at the numbers collectively. And in essence, there's a 100 to 120 million ballpark budget, slightly flexible, but within that range. And Manchester United want not just one Mount, whose medical, by the way, is on Monday next week, but another. So if Mount was 65, 70 million, then that might price Manchester United out of Onana. Whereas now, by paying 55 up front, 5 in add-ons, there's still a large enough portion of the kitty left, even under the Glazers and respecting the financial fair play rules, to potentially advance on another player. And that might well be the Inter goalkeeper, Andre Onana, because formal talks are now underway.
I was going to say, I've just literally had the news right now that's appeared on my phone, and it says that the pursuit has stepped up for United signing him, because now the Mason Mount deal is done. I mean, that's good news, I guess, for United fans, but at the same time, it's a bit bittersweet, because what does this mean for David De Gea, Ben?
Well, David De Gea, I think, is well aware that Manchester United, regardless of if he stays or goes, and we're going to find out very soon, despite the uncertainty, But the club are looking for a number one goalkeeper. So that's either a number one to compete with De Gea and then replace him, or simply come in now. And I think if De Gea senses that he's going to be number two immediately, then he won't want to stay at the football club. So we've heard all kinds of narratives as to why the deal hasn't yet been signed. And ultimately, De Gea is heading into free agency. So Manchester United need to clarify that situation. But regardless of De Gea, they're looking for a long-term number one, which is why they're talking to Onana. And that's just going to depend on fee in many ways. So an interesting subplot in all of this is that Inter have just said goodbye to Milan Skriniar. He's joining PSG on a free transfer. And a year ago, PSG offered 60 million euros and Inter said no, they wanted 70 million euros plus. Then in January, Nasser Al-Khalifi came back and directly negotiated with Inter again and said, I'll take him, but it has to be for 15, maybe 20 million euros. And again, Inter said, no, that's not good enough value. We'd rather lose the player on a free. Now, PSG have been patient. They've got Skriniar, and Inter are arguably, based on a year ago, 60 million euros out of pocket. And what that means is that they're going to have to let one or two of their stars go. And as a consequence, because they want to hang on to Bastoni, who probably is untouchable, and Lautaro Martinez, who was on red-hot form last season, Onana might be the one that they have to sell, and Manchester United will play on that. So Inter's starting position is that if they can get it, 60 million euros, and we've even heard 70 million euros quoted in the past, but I think that's a little bit too high. Manchester United are going to be looking, if they can, for much closer to 50 million euros, even 45 million euros in terms of the guaranteed. And there is a deal there to be had. So now we just have to wait and see how the formal talks go. But Onana's interested in the move, and Manchester United are looking for a number one goalkeeper, regardless of what happens with David De Gea.
So before we do move on away from United, two more questions. So is David De Gea got an idea of where he'll be going? I mean, you're a journalist, that's why I'm asking you. Have you heard anything? Is there any clubs that are interested in him? I know he's got a pretty high wage, which he was willing to come down, but I guess that was mostly because it's Manchester United. He is still going to be wanting quite a bit of money, right?
I think so, but the fact that De Gea was prepared to take a pay cut at Manchester United, and still might be at the time of recording anyway, tells you that the wage that may have put off suitors will be slightly lower. So now we have to understand, first of all, what the situation is going to be with Manchester United. And then there is, of course, some interest in David De Gea, but it depends upon his aspirations. Saudi Arabia are looking for exactly that kind of profile. So it might be one to watch. They've not made him an offer at this point, but that can change over time. And naturally, there's an opportunism from Saudi Arabia. And the fact that the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, PIF, control 4 clubs allows them to put very versatile offers together where players can choose between Riyadh and Jeddah potentially, and they can get big wages as well. So there's no indication yet where De Gea might go next. I think the next step in this narrative is he definitely going to leave Manchester United, or are we going to get a twist in the imminent minutes and hours where he actually ends up staying?
That's really interesting stuff, to be honest with you, Ben. And yeah, if you can keep us in the loop, give us those 5 exclusives, we'll really be appreciative. I just want to go back to the number 9 situation at Manchester United. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good signing in my opinion, Mason Mount. But you know, I'm surprised he was their number 1 target. Surely they're not looking for a striker. Especially with the takeover maybe happening, maybe not happening. They've got to make sure that they stay within the wage demands and stuff like that. What are they doing with the striking option going forward?
Well, there's 2 separate points almost. Mason Mount was the number 1 gettable target and at value in Manchester United's mind, even though they went a bit higher than their first bid, for example, which was dismissed out of hand, which was only 40 million. But the priority position is number 9. And I think if Manchester United had a viable number 9 option now that was also available on the market within their budget, then of course that player would become the priority. But Mount, in terms of timing, was right to do now. And because of Erik ten Hag's desire, that's why a lot of the energy and efforts were put on getting it over the line. It doesn't mean that Mount is ranked above number 9. It's just who's the gettable number 9 right now, and it might drag on. And then you have to look at the budget as well. So we know that in a perfect world, but it's dreamland for Manchester United, Harry Kane would be their top target. But there's always been low optimism, and Manchester United explored that deal early. One, to understand if the player might help them force the move, and two, to understand whether Daniel Levy would sell to a Premier League rival. And United have got low optimism that they'll be able to get anything done on that front, which is ultimately why they're currently not pursuing it. And if anything, with Bayern's pursuit of Harry Kane changes their mind, we have to wait and see whether they try and re-enter the race. But even if Manchester United want Kane, that's a big proportion of their budget. And this is the challenge with the number 9. Who's out there that's in Manchester United's budget and readily available? So I think that Rasmus Højlund is one to watch, younger and not necessarily as prolific as some of the other names. Victor Osimhen has a sky-high price tag. He could still end up signing a 2-year deal with Napoli. The sort of agreement in principle is there, but on the understanding it won't be signed until the players assess the market. And then Napoli also accept that if a big enough offer comes in, they'll sell. But big enough in Napoli's mind is almost double the 80 million euros package that they say that they paid for the player, when guaranteed fee, bonuses and valuations of player swaps are all factored in. So this wasn't a cheap deal for Napoli from Lille, and they're taking that number and almost doubling it. And again, that prices Manchester United out of the market. I'd keep an eye on Dusan Vlahovic as well. That's one that, if it does get done, will be easier later in the window, because there's a lot of upheaval at the moment at Juventus, but there's a very real possibility he becomes available on the market. Manchester United and Chelsea could be ones to watch. So this again is why everybody's trying to understand, what can Manchester United spend within financial fair play? How will outgoings help them generate more budget? And does a new owner impact anything? And once they get the answers to those questions and some stability at the football club, possibly towards the end of the window, you might find that they choose to move, and that's when they drop a big amount of money towards a traditional number 9. So it's a priority position, but it's just not as easy to get done now, which is why Manchester United chose to focus their time and energy on Mason Mount.
Now, I want to move it along to Arsenal Football Club for obvious reasons. Can I ask, when is the Declan Rice medical going to be complete?
Well, there's nothing scheduled at the moment because minor points are still being discussed. But the feeling is that next week, middle of the week, in likelihood, the medical will be scheduled if everything goes according to plan. So there's an agreement in principle. And as of last night, anyway, it may change by the time people are actually watching this video, the payment structure was still being finalized. And I would call this haggling, and both sides are calm about the situation, especially after Manchester City pulled out of the race. So there's an agreement on the fee. There's a broad consensus over the package, but how quickly the guaranteed fee gets paid is the point of debate. I wouldn't even call it contention. And there's back and forth between the clubs. And as soon as they finalize that, then obviously a green light will be given to proceed with the Rice medical. But Rice has always wanted Arsenal. Arsenal have always wanted Rice. They've gone above West Ham's valuation of around 100 million. So West Ham played the rivalry very well, fueling a belief that Manchester City might come back in a second time, and they didn't. And Arsenal chose to be very bullish. And that's quite un-Arsenal-like, to increase the guaranteed fee by 25 million between their successful bid, or almost successful bid, and the rejected one before that. And this is because Arsenal wanted to make sure that there wasn't a repeat of the Mykhailo Mudryk situation where they lost out on the player to Chelsea. So Arsenal are delighted. They're obviously having a highly successful window. Jurrien Timber is expected now to come in as well. There's effectively...
coming in when is what the Arsenal fans want to know. When should we be expecting that announcement?
Well, as of last night, there was a verbal agreement, certainly on the broad package on offer. And the expectation is that the total deal is going to total just over £40 million. The guaranteed fee will be a little bit less. So it really is very advanced and close at this point in a verbal sense. And again, over the course of today, and certainly by early next week, I would expect Arsenal to be able to wrap up a deal, which means that by effectively pre-season, certainly as far as when the senior players who have had a bit more time off return. Arsenal's expectation is that joining Kai Havertz will be both Rice and Timber, and as a consequence, they will have spent over £200 million and been highly aggressive. And this is not only to close the gap on Manchester City and try and challenge for the Premier League again, it's also to make sure that they consolidate themselves in the top four, because they're well aware that Manchester United might improve under new owners. Chelsea can't be as bad as they were last season and have got a lot of young talent. Liverpool are moving in the market and are likely to be back where they've been in the past few seasons. And with Newcastle entering into what I think now we can call a big seven, and who knows what Spurs are going to be like under Ange Postecoglou. James Maddison is a very shrewd signing. If Kane stays, they're going to have plenty of goals and creativity. It's going to be difficult to get into the top four. And it's funny how when Arsene Wenger used to say Arsenal top four, it's a good achievement, everyone derided that, but he was ahead of his time in many ways. I don't know what you think, but I think that now top four is not only incredibly tough, but if you get it season on season on season near automatically, then from a budgetary point of view, you can start planning to be more ambitious. But of course, when Wenger said it, fourth was pathetic, third was pathetic, second was failure and runner-up. But now I think Arsenal and other clubs are saying Champions League first, and then if we can close the gap on what they consider to be the world's best team, of course, that's what they want to do. But first and foremost, to close the gap, you've got to be in the top four season on season on season.
Agreed. Very last point before we go, I wanted to ask, with all these signings that Arsenal have made, Romeo Lavia, does that mean we're going to be pulling out of that, or is there still interest there? Because what a signing that would be if we got him as well from Southampton.
I think that Arsenal have looked at Lavia, so it can never be ruled out, especially because with the outgoings that are likely to happen, they'll want another midfielder. But I would keep an eye on Liverpool here as well. I know there's a lot of talk about Szoboszlai, and that's likely now to get over the line. And he has a 70 million euros release clause that expires today. And on top of that, Liverpool are looking at Kefren Thuram, but the third player on their list is Lavia as well. So there's probably going to be a bit of a bidding war for Lavia. Chelsea have had a historical interest as well. Manchester City not expected to move at this point, but remember they've got a buyback clause that's only active in 2024. So there's a lot of top Premier League clubs looking at Lavia, but I suspect that Arsenal's next priority will be to resolve a few outgoings before we see them move in the market again, presuming that Rice gets over the line and also Timber comes in.
Okay. Listen, Ben, that is absolutely fantastic. We're going to have you on again next week, but please make sure everyone watching goes to follow Ben. His details are in the description, etc. Top journalist. Thank you very much for your time, and you've made me a happy man today. I'm not going to lie, Ben. So sorry again, because commiserations for Leicester getting relegated. If anything counts, I reckon you'll be coming up really soon, man. You got too many good players for you to not come back up, but hopefully I'm right.
I hope so. I've got my Leicester jersey behind, and I think Leicester fans are just praying that Harvey Barnes somehow stays, and there's interest in Timothy Castagne, but Harry Winks is coming in for 10 million from Spurs. So life is good. And why not be optimistic ahead of the new season before a ball is kicked and say, we've got Enzo, Pep's assistant. We're coming back up.
Good luck, man. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon. Peace.
All the best.